Hi everybody. So in about 3 weeks from now, we'll be meeting for our Ugandan adventure, which includes photographing chimpanzees, gorillas, and a small stay in between in the Queen Elizabeth National Park. Now, like I did for Iceland and Svalbard, this video is intended to try and help you prepare for the trip and to answer some questions that you have. So I'm going to break this up in a couple of sections, and at the end, I'm going to be answering the questions that most of you guys sent through on the WhatsApp group I created for our trip. So without any further ado, here we go. Okay, so we're going to be meeting at the Boma guest house. That evening will be the first dinner of the trip together. So with the different arrival times, all the transferring has been sorted. So we will meet each other for dinner, and I will then do not a presentation, just a bit of a talk again to talk us through the whole, I wanted to say expedition, but through the tour. Now, the difference for me between an expedition and a tour is kind of more scheduled. We're leaving at 9, we're going to be back at 10, those kind of things. Whereas expedition requires a bit of patience. Now, the only reason why I'm taking some of the expedition mindset into this and most of the other tours that I host is it gives you a deeper understanding and appreciation for the timing, for the things that you see, for things like patience and flexibility. So at dinner time, we'll chat through all of that. And then the next morning, we hit the road and we drive up to Primate Lodge. That's in Kibale, and that's where we're going to be doing the chimpanzees. So we're going to get to Kibale in the afternoon. Now, we're not doing chimpanzees that afternoon. We're staying at the Primate Lodge. It's set in the forest, so you can go and have a walk around, do some photography. What I normally do on these trips, but we can decide this at dinner the night before, is to go on a little bit of photo walk, just for you to stretch your photographic muscles, to make sure you understand your camera. I'll work through certain techniques that you're going to be using and will be needing for the primates in the forest, and then dinner at the lodge. The next morning, we go out on our track. Now, chimpanzees is a very interesting thing. It is a what's the word I'm looking for? Habituated group. So they are used to people. So we are pretty much guaranteed to find them. It's interesting. Sometimes we track them as far as standing still, listen to the audio, and then walk into them. It can be quite busy with the chimpanzees. If you find a big troop, they're all over the place. So I will talk you through the photography the day before, so you know what to expect, settings and such. But it's a great experience. Remember to shoot video as well. Right, that afternoon, after the track in the morning, we'll come back to the lodge. We have the afternoon at the lodge to sit back, have a drink, rest our feet. And what I want to do on that day is do some Lightroom. I want to make sure you're all on the same page so that you can in the evenings as well do your thing. And then we go to bed from there. The next morning, we leave, and we drive south. So we're going to cross the equator, which is a pretty cool selfie spot if you want to take a selfie on the equator. And we're heading to Queen Elizabeth National Park. We spend one night at Mwea. And from there, that afternoon on the first day, we are doing a boat cruise on the river, which is great. Amazing photography for birds. But again, every night before, I will brief you on photographic techniques that you'll be needing the next day, as well as just what to wear and other expectations. From there, we move to Ishasha, which the best way I can describe it to you, it's a beautiful safari camp, tented if I recall, but it's very much like the Mara, big open areas, great game viewing. So that is normal safari going. There's a couple of questions on this, but I will get to that at the end. From there, we get in the car again, we drive down and we get to Bwindi. Bwindi, we're going to be there for 4 nights and then 3 days of gorilla tracking. Now, I'm going to break down the exact of the tracking in one of the sections further on in this video. On the last morning, we go and we fly back to Entebbe. We spend one more night at, I think it's called the Two Friends Beach House, something like that. And then the next day, we depart on our international flight home. So that is the itinerary in a nutshell. Let's move on and look at the different experiences. Chimps, Queen Elizabeth, and gorillas. Okay, so the 3 experiences are pretty different, and the reason that we've put the chimps first in this is it gives you an idea of how to photograph in a rainforest. It's difficult from an exposure point of view. You might have to do very fine focusing through the leaves if that's the case, but the chimps gives you a good test drive for it. The rest of the Queen Elizabeth National Park, most of you will be able to do this normal safari, but I am going to push you creatively. I've got a lot of new ideas. And then gorillas is obviously our hero experience, what we're going for. So Chimpanzees, I'll talk about the photography a bit later on. Chimpanzees are busy. They're all over the place. They're very vocal. So photographically, you want to not focus on just one animal. Try and get more in. Try and get the behavior. But again, we'll talk through this. Queen Elizabeth, stock standard safari. Go out, sundowner drinks, photography, sunrise, sunset, pretty cool. Fire in the evening to sit around. Gorillas. So, let me just backtrack. For chimpanzees, what we'll do, we'll meet at the ranger station. We walk from Primate Lodge. We walk there, and then we walk with our local ranger / tracker into the experience. When we finished, back there and to the camp. The gorillas, there are one of two. So we have 3 different tracks. From where we stay, there are 2 different tracking areas. The one is called Buhoma, and the other one is called Ruhija. Now, I'm not sure exactly where our permits are. I'll know this closer to the time. But both of these has a different amount of gorilla families that you can track from there. How that'll work. Wake up in the morning. If we're going to Ruhija, it's normally a further drive, so that's an early departure. Otherwise, I think about 8 o'clock, we walk from the lodge, maybe 7:45. And we get to the gorilla center as such, right? There, they do a briefing. What to do, what to expect, the safety things, and so on and so forth. This in itself makes for pretty cool iPhone videos and shots, which is cool. From there, we get assigned a gorilla guide with a weapon, just like safari, just to be sure. Early in the morning, there are trackers that go out and they find the animals first. So our gorilla guide is then in touch with the trackers, so he kind of knows which direction to walk in. So we then hit the road, so to speak. We get our backpacks and off we go. Once you get within a certain distance from the animals, now that hike could be 30 minutes, it could be 3.5 hours. We don't know. This depends on the animals, right? You stop, you put your gear on the floor, your backpack if you were carrying one, and then you get your cameras and in you go. From the moment we make contact with the gorillas, we have 1 hour. Now, sometimes we can squeeze a little bit extra, but it depends on a lot of variables. I'll tell you about that on the tour. But normally it's 1 hour, and then when we're finished, you walk back to where you left your cameras, your camera bags, and back to the camp we go. Now, normally we get back to our accommodation anytime from 1 o'clock through 4 o'clock. If it's a short hike, maybe earlier, right? The rest of the afternoon is chill time. That's when we're going to sit down. We're going to talk about Lightroom. We're going to talk about photography, what to try tomorrow, things like that. So those are the 3 different experiences, but we'll break this down again every day before. For now, though, let's look at clothing for this trip. Okay, I'm going to start from the bottom and work the way up. The most important thing that you want is a decent pair of hiking shoes. I personally would recommend waterproof ankle high, not just a normal sneaker type thing. The height makes a difference. Now, we are in a rainforest. There is going to be mud. Sometimes you step in mud. Sometimes it's a very dry one. But you don't want to be sinking in and get water into your shoe. So a waterproof hiking boot is great. And please don't buy one just before you come out. Make sure they walked in. It's a great suggestion. A little bit further up, gaiters. Now, if you don't know what a gaiter is, it's a piece of canvas with elastic bands in it that you wrap around the top of your shoe. Normally, it stops seeds and things going in there, but it can also be for mud. Now, I don't normally wear my gaiters when I go because my boots, I'm happy to mess them up, and they are 100% waterproof to the top. I would have gaiters, or I always have them with me, even though I don't use them. You don't want to be the other way around. So gaiters, highly recommended, but not the end of the world. All right, a little bit higher, cargo pants or expedition pants. Now, this is pants. Don't wear like a tracksuit or t-shirt material type pants. Something harder. Cargo pants works well. The expedition pants, I use Fjallraven or Norona, some of those brands, which is great. Comfortable, but kind of hard wearing, if that makes sense. The reason for that is you mission off-road, so to speak. There's stinging nettles and stuff like that you don't want to have something too, let's say, flimsy at the bottom. All right, a little bit higher up, t-shirt, long t-shirt, layers. In the morning, it can sometimes be fresh. Okay, it can sometimes be fresh. So you want to have something light, not a big jacket like this, something light that you can take off and stick in your backpack if necessary. Okay, the one thing that you want is something weather and rain proof. So I would have all my normal clothes. I normally have one of these microfiber tech shirts that I hike with, because I can fold the arms down or I can roll them up, depending. And what's the word? It is waterproof, but it dries quick. So if it's a very hot day or if it's raining. But you want a rain jacket that goes over all of this that you can zip up. If it rains, we're still going to go out. So rain jacket, very important. Think about it as well, is if your pants aren't either splashproof or waterproof, you might want to get, I know in South Africa you buy them at Cape Union Mart. It's basically a rain pants, like a rain jacket, rain pants. They fold up very small, but you can put that over. I've never used it there, but I know some people prefer to have that on. My pants are kind of semi-waterproof, and that's more than enough for me. Waterproof rain jacket, big thing. Now, if you go on Google, you'll see a lot of places recommend gardening gloves. What that's for is as you're walking and there is areas with stinging nettle, if you want to grab foliage and move it aside, right? To have that, because the stinging nettle can be a pretty interesting thing. Saves the hands. Okay, so you want gloves if that's the case. I normally buy the cheapy ones from something like Builder's Warehouse, gardening gloves, because you throw them away afterwards. But it is nice to have. Hat, obviously, very important, and a cap or something, and then also a bandana. I'm going to be bringing some bandanas for you, but if you have more, bring more. A bandana you can put around your neck. If it's hot, wet it around your neck, sometimes over your head. It's even nice to put around your wrist that you can use to wipe sweat away or whatever the case might be. So overall, that would be the main thing. Most important thing, again, shoes. Very, very important. If there's any other questions on the back of this, guys, we're on the WhatsApp group. Send me a message with specifics, and we can look from there. That would be overall. Now, after the actual tracks, right? So I love my hiking boots. I can walk for days in them, but when I sit still in them, they hurt me because they're designed to be walked in. So what I do at the end of the track, I have a pair of Birkenstocks or just flops with socks, and I can walk around in that at the lodge. We're not going to go far. We're going to walk from the lightroom area to dinner to the bar and back. Okay, so any kind of easy-going shoe, it could be sneakers, it could be a pair of Crocs. It's a personal thing about Crocs. Whatever it is, but just something comfortable to walk around the lodge in. That would be for chimps and for gorillas. Obviously, when we go to Queen Elizabeth, it's normal safari gear. So I'm sure you guys are happy with that. All right. Next up, I'm going to chat about photographic equipment. Here we go. Okay, so let's start with the hero thing. Gorillas. Your go-to lens is a 70 to 200 2.8. That's it. The second lens is a 24 to 70. And if you want anything else, probably a little bit of a wider one. Do not discount the phone. This thing for videos and just pictures on the fly, really cool. The reason you want a 70 to 200 2.8, the 2.8 because it could potentially be dark. If the animals we find is in the shadows, you want the 2.8 to get more light in. Okay? The 2470 is nice if it's an open area, but often these animals are in the thick stuff. It's a rainforest, remember? A 2470 then gives you a lot of environment, and that can be quite messy. So between a 70 to 200 and a 2470, that is your go-to. Now, I would highly recommend you have two bodies, one on each of those, and then your phone as a backup. What you would also want the 2474, sometimes these animals come really close, like they'll bump you out the way. There you could hold your 2470 and just kind of fire off a few shots. Sometimes we're lucky that we get in a position where the animal's 2 meters from you, but 70 to 200, 2470. Now, in Queen Elizabeth, for both the boat ride and on the safari vehicles, you want to maybe have more. So either maybe a 1.2 converter or a 2 times converter if you have a 70 to 200, unless you're happy bringing a big lens along as well, knowing you're only going to use it for those 3 days that were in Queen Elizabeth National Park. That's your choice. Something like 100 to 400 or the 80 to 400 is a good lens for gorillas, but you need to make sure your camera can then deal with the high ISO because you're going to have to punch that ISO really high in some instances. 70-200, 24-70, two bodies, phone charge if you have a GoPro or one of the Osmo Pockets, also works really well. Don't need for tripods. I take my tripod with always. Maybe there's a star opportunity or I enjoy my landscapes, but you do not need a tripod for this trip. So that's cool. And then one question for later I'm pulling forward. Someone asked about bean bags. Do you want to take an empty bean bag for the safari vehicle? If you feel it's necessary, yes. I normally won't even bother because a lot of the stuff you'll be shooting handheld. If you need to brace, right, a jacket or a scarf rolled up on one of the supporting beams or on the side of the window normally works well. But if it's easy enough for you to bring it, 100%. If you have more questions on photography equipment as well, drop me a message in the WhatsApp group and we'll go from there. Okay, so now that we've spoken about photographic equipment, in order to prepare yourself photographically for the trip, safari easy, you've all done that, pretty cool thing. To prepare yourself for photographing gorillas and chimps, I would highly recommend that you go and look at a lot of images of gorillas and chimps. Also, if you really want to dig deep on this, go and look at a tutorial maybe on YouTube of how to photograph portraits, people. Because in this instance, anthropomorphizing the animal does work from a creative point of view. You can see, okay, there's the mom and the baby, there's love. How do I photograph that? The smallest thing in the faces makes a huge difference here. So go and look at portrait photography, maybe a tutorial or buy a magazine or something, and then look at a lot of the images of these things. I will, again, the day before we get to chimps, the day before we get to Queen Elizabeth, the day before we get to gorillas, I will be showing you a whole bunch of images to get your creative voice like awake. But do the homework. Go and look at images of these things. You're going to be glad you did. Right, next one, some extras. Okay, so some of the extra things I would highly recommend that you take with is because we're spending time driving distance. So I think it's maybe 3 hours is the longest drive, but we'll break it up, right? Is either a book if you're happy to read on a vehicle or a Kindle, also earphones. So you can listen to music because it's fun. We chat and everything, but after a while, dies down, have some music. You can put your head back, have a sleep, or listen to a podcast, whatever. That is quite a nice thing to have. The other thing is a water bottle. Okay, so I always take this thing. It's 750 mils, and it is amazing. It keeps colds and hots. You can take a normal water bottle if you want, but I prefer to have the temperature one. It hooks onto things very easily. In my backpack, off we go. On the backpacks, now, you're going to be walking with your backpack, or you can also give it to a porter to carry. Then there's a bit of an extra tip as such for them, right? I'll get to that at the end with Q&A. The backpack, obviously something comfortable that can take your 2 camera bodies with the lenses, your phone, your water bottle, a jacket, your rain jacket, whatever the case might be, but make sure it's comfortable. The other option for those of you that hike a lot, if you do not want to take a water bottle like this, get one of the camelbacks that sits in the backpack, and it has a little tube that you can drink from. I might take mine, but I prefer the bottle. Inside your backpack, I would also recommend some snacks. Protein bars for the walk, maybe some nuts, some raisins, whatever the case, chocolate bar. Because sometimes we can walk for about 3 hours before we find these things, okay? We'll know how far it is because the guide will tell us, but still, you might want to have a snack. We're going up and down the mountain, so it can be a little bit strenuous, not excessively at all, right? But you might want to have something to snack on. Always do that. And remember, we're not taking the snacks to the gorillas. We keep our backpacks one side and then go into the gorillas when we get close. Those are some of the extras that you might want to consider taking as well. We can talk about things like laptop, obviously. If you are on Adobe, which most of you are, make sure you've got the latest version of Adobe Lightroom, Photoshop, because I am going to be doing Photoshop with you guys. If you haven't got this, not yet, just before the trip, download Topaz, the trial version, both, and also the trial version of Nick. The latest version just came out now, Nick 5. We are going to be playing with that, I'll tell you now, and you're going to be glad that you learned these things. They're amazing. Absolutely amazing. A lot of new, for some of you that have traveled with me for a while, a lot of new ideas, a lot of new approaches, a lot of new techniques that I'm going to pull in from macro and landscape, which I've been doing quite a lot of. So I'm very excited for that. So with all of that said, let's get to your questions and answers. Okay, first question is around tips. How do you tip these people? Okay, the biggest thing is take small denominations, $5 and $10 notes if you can. How it works, The gorilla guide we can tip at the end. I'm happy as a group to collect from everybody, and I'll hand it over to our guide after each track. Normally there between 10 and 15 per person is pretty cool, right? If you want to do more, you're more than welcome, but that's kind of the recommended. The trackers. So these are 2 or 3 guys that are, like I said earlier on, they go and find the animals in the morning, we radio contact with them, and then we meet up on the way. Normally we give $5 to each of them. I normally do 10 because these guys work their asses off, so that would be for the 3 of them. But again, we pool this and we give it over to them when we finished with the gorillas before we leave. When we get back as well, the gorilla guide gets his tips over then, and then it's the normal thing like safari guide. We're going to have one guide who's our guide through the whole thing. He's going to drive the vehicle and he's through all of that. For that, normally we do $15 a day, kind of same as the Mara camp. Some people go $20, $25 a day, but that's kind of the average recommended. I hope all that makes sense. Otherwise, on the WhatsApp group, drop me a line. Biggest thing, small denominations. If you get to $20, $50, it's very difficult to break it up. So I would try and get the smaller ones. Okay, next question here is around masks. Should we be wearing masks? Now, during the peak of COVID and just after, you had to wear masks going into the gorillas because they are susceptible. They can get flu from us, they can get COVID and things from us as well. So I'm not 100% sure of where it is right now, but I would recommend have 4 to 5 of the normal surgical masks that you buy at the pharmacy in your bag just in case. You got one for each day. I would have that, always have it with you, just to be safe because things can also change on a dime. Have it with you just to be safe. Weather. Someone asked, what is weather like in July? Now, this is a rainforest. Rainforest, right? So it's at Queen Elizabeth as well, you get beautiful African sunrises. It can be quite hot. It can be weather. Prepare for everything. The biggest thing is you're going to prepare for rain, but make sure you also have t-shirts and caps and stuff for the sunny weather. Not that cold, between 22 and kind of 27, yeah, in the middle of the day. Mornings, a little bit more chilly. And the rain is the biggest thing. Make sure you have rain gear. Just while I think about it, also for those of you that are not comfortable for your cameras to get wet or rained on, you might want to get one of those, I think Think Tank does quite a good one, a raincoat for your camera. Not the end of the world. I shoot Olympus. I'm quite happy for it to get wet because I know it's weather sealed. With that, see, I should have said this at photography, but microfiber cloth to clean the front of your lens. If it rains, clean the front. All right. Weather. Food. How much vegetarian options are there and protein bars should you take? Yes, take protein bars. I personally take a protein bar for every single day of the trip. If I don't use them, I take it with to the Mara or I take them home. Nice to have. Do the lodges cater for vegetarian? Yes, most of them do. The majority of them is a buffet. Let me just get this right. The ones that are not buffet always have options. We will also, when we get to each camp, I will make sure that they know about any dietaries. And that I will double check with all of you on the first night when we have dinner. But like Primate Lodge, for example, they ask the day before, the morning, what do you want for dinner? So you can always prep. So there's always time. So from a vegetarian point of view, wouldn't worry. So we're good for that. Cost not included. So this is like any kind of trip. Gratuities obviously not included in the cost you've paid. We've spoken about that. Items of a personal nature. If you want to buy any curios and things like that. So at Buhoma, there is a little village attached where we can go walk up and down. It makes for great travel photography, but also you can do some shopping there. Local curios, wooden little gorillas and things like that, which is pretty neat. And that is about it. Oh, there's one more. 2 more, sorry. Vehicles. The vehicle we drive around in, right? The vehicle we drive around in is very much like a Wild Mara vehicles. It's a Land Cruiser where the pop top happens and there's seats for everybody down the side. So that's easy. Then when we get to Ishasha, they do have open vehicles. It depends on which one. Do we use our pop-top one or the open vehicles? Much of a muchness there for me. I personally prefer the pop-top one because we can shoot standing up as well, which is nice. But that we'll find out the day before. But make sure you prep for both, however you would prep for those, yeah? And then Wi-Fi. Yes, Wi-Fi at the lodges. All the lodges we go to does have Wi-Fi. Remember, it's Africa though, so if the wind blows in the funny direction, maybe the Wi-Fi goes away. But yes, you will have connectivity there. I Did last time when I was in Uganda, I did get myself a SIM card at the airport, if I can recall correctly. And we have time as well because we're at Boma Guest Lodge for one night. So for those of you that want to do SIM cards, I'm sure we can make a plan, but let's chat on the WhatsApp group as well. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. I hope that helps a little bit, guys. If you have any questions, let's put them on the WhatsApp group for Uganda 2022, because then we can bounce ideas and stuff there. And I will be in touch again. Well, we'll be in touch all the time, but on the WhatsApp group closer to the time for the final details. I can't wait to get back. It's a great experience. And your photographic portfolio will be better for this because it's very intimate. It's sometimes very abstract, but it's very personal. So I look forward to that. Guys, if you have any questions, drop me an email, put it on the WhatsApp. Otherwise, I will see you all in a few weeks, but we'll chat soon. My name is Gerry. I'm from Wild Eye. See you in Uganda soon. Bye for now.